All right. Good evening and welcome to the Ward 1 Neighborhood Planning Assembly meeting for December. It's December 14th and we're here at the Friends Meeting House in Burlington. So with that, I'd like to formally start the meeting and start with people introducing themselves. We're going to start here.
Hello, my name is Troy Hedrick. I live on Billy Court. I'm also the state representative-elect for District 15. Nice to see you all.
Hello, good evening. I'm Maya Brandt. I'm East District City Councilor, sworn in on Monday, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm Jonathan Chappell-Sokol. I'm Ward 1 North Prospect Street and a member of the steering committee.
I'm Angie Chappell-Sokol. I live on North Prospect Street. Many people mistake me for Sharon Busher because we both have a lovely head of gray hair, but I don't have her political talents. I'm just making it clear.
Kathy Allwell. I live on Burlington resident. I actually live on South Prospect Street, but I'm crashing your meeting.
Stephanie Seguin with South Prospect Street.
My name's Carter Newbeezer. Sorry, I don't want to like wrap Stephanie here. My name's Carter Newbeezer. I live on Colchester Ave, and I am on the NPA steering committee.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julia Ursaki. I'm with Burlington Public Works, and I also live on Hyde Street, so nearby.
Peter Lukowski, and I live on East Avenue in Burlington Co-housing.
Cheryl Green, also Burlington Co-housing.
I'm Carol Livingston, and I'm on the steering committee. I live on Calarco Court, just south of the cemetery.
Has to go back.
Okay.
You have someone right in back of you. All right, and we have people online. You want to start, Dave?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Cawley, and I live on Nash Place, part of the Old East End. Happy to be here tonight.
Sharon? You're on mute, Sharon.
Sorry. Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Sharon Busher. I live on East Avenue. I'm the other white-haired woman, and I'm happy to be here.
Pat? You're on mute, Pat. All right, welcome back. Breck?
Hi, folks. This is Breck and Linda Bowden, who live on Brooks Avenue.
All right, Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
This is my pleasure. Hello, I'm Sam Hendricks. I'm the CETO staff.
And Earhart?
Hi, folks. There I am. Nice to see you all. Sorry I can't join in person. Earhart Monte here, 60 Grove Street, Ward 1.
And oh, Sophie.
Sophie Quest from the Old East End on Chase Street, Ward 1.
Okay, and Pat, are you there?
I am here. This is Pat Seelan. I live on Nash Place in the Old East End.
Okay, and I forgot to introduce myself. So my name's Tom Derenthal. I'm on the steering committee here, and I live on Nash Place as well. And again, welcome everyone to our December meeting. Oh.
Chris, you want to grab a mic, Chris?
Yep.
Hey, I'm Chris Hazley from Ward 3. I'm here tonight in my capacity as a Church Street Marketplace Commissioner. Thank you.
Introduce myself.
I'm Catherine. Excuse me. I'm Catherine. Sorry, I'm Catherine Verman. I live on North Street in Burlington. I mean, obviously, in Burlington.
Okay. So do we have any announcements? And I guess we're going to merge announcements and speak out because they're more or less the same thing. Oh, wait, we have. That's right.
My name is Dee Dee McNow from Prospect Hill.
And I'm Zariah Hightower from Hildred Drive.
Okay, but just remind people that the microphones do not amplify your voice. It's only for the camera and these people here. So you need to talk to everybody in the room. Thank you.
Karen, are you going to introduce yourself?
I'm Karen Long from Henry Street. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to shift into announcements. Does anyone have an announcement? Anyone in the room? I'm seeing no. Carol.
Okay. This is okay. Yeah. This is actually from Glenn and Holly McCray. And they just wanted us to be aware of a nonprofit called Score You Bring at 12 North Street. Bring us your broken stuff and we'll try and fix it or help you do it free. You hate to see stuff lined up in a landfill, all kinds of stuff, toasters, lamps, computers, software, electronics, bikes. And it's at 12 North Street and they're laboratory B, yes. Run by the nonprofit laboratory B. And I will include their contact information in the minutes, but they're at 12 North Street and open from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay, so that's the Repair Cafe.
Thank you.
That's the Repair Cafe, and they do it once a month, one Saturday a month, from 11 in the morning until 3.
They're fabulous.
And you'll see it advertised on Front Porch Forum and probably other places.
And it's advertised when it's open on a particular.
Okay, they'll warn you ahead of time.
Okay.
When they're doing it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Do we have any other announcements in the room? Yes.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm here with the marketplace. I'm one of the resident commissioners. That means I don't have a storefront on the marketplace. We did not elect to meet this month in December, largely due to the holidays. We will be meeting at our usual time in January, which is the third Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. in the Sharon Bushore conference room. And we're going to have a little bit of a work session the first time around. So I'm really interested in hearing what individual residents want and need and concerns that they may have about the marketplace. Certainly, we hear a lot from the business owners there, but the marketplace belongs to everybody. So just if you have thoughts or concerns or opinions, I'd love to have you hear from you. We don't get a lot of participation at the marketplace in terms of public forums. So certainly have room if you have thoughts that you want to share. And again, those meetings are the third Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. in the Sharon Bushore conference room. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other announcements in the room?
Is announcement, excuse me, Sam, Speakout?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So my name is Catherine Verman. I came to the last meeting or I think it was the last one, and I spoke out and I don't know. I didn't know the protocol, so I'm speaking out again on the same thing. So Zariah, I read really carefully the that you just put out. And excuse me, I don't know why I'm feeling a little croaky. And I agreed with so much of what you said. I so appreciated the sentiment, how we as a community need to provide, good schools and housing and healthcare and all of that. And I have a concern as well. So my concern does not negate all that you wrote. And my concern is that I feel like this beloved place that we live in has become polarized in its thinking and politically. And I don't want to live in a world of polarization. It's too much in our world now. And I don't want to live in that world here. And I feel the way it shows up is this demonization of the police force. And this idea that they're I don't know, bad people, and that they have to be watched. And I feel in my neighborhood where I live that we do not have enough police protection. Yes, I'd like to live in a world where we didn't need that police protection, but we do still. And when there's a feeling that houses can be broken into and nothing's going to happen, or there's not going to be response for hours, it just leaves me feeling vulnerable. My next door neighbor was broken into. He's scared. He's scared to leave the house. And I just think that we need to create a life in Burlington where there's a level of safety for everyone, for those who need housing, for those who need better health care, for those who are seeking excellent education, and for those who want to feel safe in their homes as well.
I have one too. Yeah, I'll go first and then hand it to you. Sorry. So my name's Karen Long, and I just listened to VPR, and the South Burlington Police Chief made an announcement that they are suffering from far more burglaries and car thefts. And he even mentioned, and we are not, like short staffed like some of our neighbors are. So I thought it was kind of telling that he was saying that. He said one of the ways they're combating that is they have 12-hour shifts, and, it's helping, I guess. But I've lived here a long time, 40, 45 years. And on Henry Street, we had more burglaries 10, 15 years ago when I think we had 120 police chief or policemen. So I don't really think it's that there's not police walking up and down my street or your street, and that's why people are getting broken into. I think truly times are hard for people, and that is why it's happening. So anyway, just to reflect on what you said, and I agree, Zariah, what you wrote was amazing. But the other thing that I wanted to mention as far as the marketplace is the smoking on the marketplace really bothers me, because people are not supposed to smoke there. And I think it also might be City Hall Park. I'm not sure if that's still, we have a security guard working on City Hall Park with a big yellow jacket that says security. And he was smoking there this weekend, standing at City Hall Park smoking with his, official jacket. But I thought, well, maybe City Hall Park doesn't count. I don't know. But anyway, that really bothers me that we can't be polite to people, people that want to smoke and need to smoke, I think should be polite to the other people. But the last thing I wanted to mention was, thank you, Zariah, for bringing up, that people really wanted 8 wards and 16 counselors, yet we are going to have 8 wards and 12 counselors if we approve it. But we don't have to approve that. We are going to get to vote in March. And regardless of the way the lines are, if we don't want to have those districts and only have 12 counselors, we can all vote against that in March. Anyway, thank you.
Twisting my hair, you want me? Oh yeah, sorry. Well, yeah, I mean, my speak out was on policing and also on redistricting. I was also just frustrated that one of the things I think that I saw that got lost in the redistricting conversation was the fact that the overwhelming majority of like the feedback during the formal public feedback process, the committee on redistricting, was that we didn't want districts. I mean, that was like near unanimous. I think it was Ann Brenya from Ward 8 who sort of disagreed with that. But, I mean, I talked to Lee Terhune over in the New North End. She was like, I don't know, like this is so almost overwhelming. People don't want districts, and we ended up with districts. So anyway, I thought I just have to throw it out there. I just think they're less democratic and make it harder for working class people and young people to vote. And I think it makes different neighborhoods less adequately represented on the city council. And then on policing, I mean, I'm sorry that like I don't want anybody in our community to feel safe. Or not safe. Sorry. Want people to feel safe. Lord have mercy. Can you imagine? Yeah, I will say communities all across the state, are facing trouble hiring police. That is not unique to Burlington. I think one of the things that's also, including our state police, I mean, that's just a fact. Gun violence is up across the state and across the country. All the different things that we're experiencing in terms of public safety challenges are up across the state and across the country. If this was somehow, the result of efforts to make sure that our police do a better job when it comes to racial disparity and how they treat working class people and how they treat folks with mental health challenges and who are suffering from addiction, it just doesn't track. It wouldn't be popping up in other places in the same way. We just went through 3 years plus of a COVID pandemic that isolated all of us. We're social creatures. We need human contact. We need community. That's part of why the NPA exists and like why it's so important. And I can tell you from personal experience, I'm in a 12-step program, and there's people who had 30 plus years who went back out and who took a drink or a drug during COVID because no in-person meetings, which are so crucial. So yeah, we're facing like some mental health collective challenges as a community. And like, I think we have to recognize that. And I think the impact of COVID is continuously getting lost in this conversation. And I'll say, I'm really concerned that there's conversation about appointing Chief Murad as permanent chief. I mean, it's someone who still has not acknowledged racial bias in policing. And the police transformation stuff didn't just happen in a vacuum. We had the Melly brothers, who were not bad kids. They grew up here and are well known in Burlington, and they had their heads bounced off a brick wall. We had someone who was punched to death and died in the hospital later by a police officer. This idea that like our police didn't have a lack of trust with the community before, and somehow that like this is a reaction to like some national movement that's really not applicable to our community, I just think is not, I don't know. I just don't think it's hitting the nail on the head. I think we need to like think long and hard and remember the challenges for years that our police force and city leadership have created by not acting in a way that elicits trust from the people that they're supposed to be helping. But I'll get off my soapbox, but I just had to voice that.
Thanks. A quick question. Can people online hear what's being said?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We had, all right. Earhart, you're on.
Thanks, Tom. I'll try to keep it brief and not reiterate what folks have said before. I really appreciated Karen and Carter's remarks about the policing. So not to reiterate, I do just want to say, I think that a disservice has been done by the politicization of public safety. And I think much like I run into people around the state who don't want to come to Burlington anymore because they don't feel safe here. I think a lot of that a lot of people's concerns and people's fears, not that they're unfounded. I'm not trying to say that, but I think they've been exacerbated by the politicization of the public safety issue. Not denying there are obviously break-ins that are happening. Our house was broken in, though, as Karen pointed out, on Grove Street, where in the old East End, where I live, we haven't seen a spate of break-ins since we were broken into and our neighbors over 10 years ago. These are things that happen really pretty, I would say pretty constantly and fairly regularly. And I just want to emphasize that it's unfortunate that it's been politicized. And I think that has helped stir the fears that I know many folks have. The other thing I wanted to say was also about redistricting, and just to say thank you to Zariah for her work trying to get a just and equitable redistricting plan for Ward 1 and the rest of the city. As other folks have pointed out, is absolutely diametrically opposed to what the advisory committee on redistricting had asked for and had recommended. I was also deeply disappointed that a map that I worked on with our neighbor from up in the New North End, Robert Bristow Johnson, who's a great map maker, was summarily rejected by the city council because it had not gone through the official city planning process. And I want to thank everybody who wrote in. There were quite a few emails that the city council received around redistricting and an equitable solution for Ward 1. Unfortunately, the way things turned out, there was a map that was posted at 4:30 on the afternoon of a city council meeting at which councilors were going to vote. And I just can't believe what a horrendous public process. No one really had a chance to digest that map or to really comment on it unless they were refreshing the city council's website like every half hour on Monday. So really bad process. I know it's been really tough for councilors and it's been contentious, but I'll also just emphasize what Karen said. It's not a done deal. We can vote against it. And the other thing is that there will be public hearings. I don't know if Zariah can announce whether those have been scheduled yet. There will be public hearings because it's going to be a charter change. Folks have another chance to weigh in on it. And the city council can certainly amend the proposed charter change based on the comments that it receives during public hearings. So I'm hoping that folks will continue to comment on the inequities in the redistricting map, and hopefully we may yet be able to change the city council's, the majority of the city council's mind on this before it gets on the ballot. Thank you.
Thanks, Erhard. Sharon?
Yes, hi. I wanted to touch on, there's so much to touch on, but I'm going to focus on a couple of things that haven't been focused on. One has to do with the rezoning of Trinity campus. And there was to be a continuation of a public hearing last night, but that was canceled. And so they're looking at the 20th, which I have issue with, the 20th of December, having that public hearing for feedback regarding a proposed zoning amendment, which I hope people have seen, which really talks about adding density, which we all really support, but it's different types of setbacks depending on height. And UVM has been unwilling to look at existing surface parking lots to put buildings over those as opposed to eating up open space or green space, which is very frustrating to me. It's frustrating to me that the students themselves who really talk about, the environment aren't really pointing this out, that, the elimination of trees and open space that deals with creating more runoff and creating more heat is not the way we should be going. But having said that, there's an opportunity still. You'll have to look at the meeting calendar to find out when and if this this continuation of the public hearing occurs, and you can weigh in and look at what is being proposed and share your comments. You may agree with the zoning, I don't, but you may find that acceptable. So I just want to encourage people to understand what's going on in their ward and have a voice. The second thing, Tom, is something that's on the agenda a little bit later, but it's not totally germane to what's on the agenda. What's on the agenda for East Avenue is traffic calming. And I wanted to just point out, since there's someone from Public Works here tonight, that right where the stop sign is, where University Road is and East Avenue, there is, if you're coming from Williston Road and going south, going north, there is a dip in the road right beyond the stop sign that is significant. And cars bottom out, trucks try to avoid it and go in the other lane, and it's getting worse and worse. And I think it's a safety issue. It's not quite a sinkhole, but it is something that really is depressed and creating problems. And I just wanted to point that out. I think it does damage to some cars. And I think at some point, someone may go in the wrong lane of traffic and actually cause an accident. They shouldn't be going fast, but we all know that people don't stop at stop signs. And that is also because I really do appreciate having eyes at various places in the city that have the ability to give tickets for violations. I think, when there are pedestrian crossings and people don't stop at stop signs, you're putting someone's life at risk. And we used to have this patrolling, a rolling police presence that would give tickets. And once people knew that there could be a ticket given, they would maybe comply for a while. Not forever, but for a while. And I miss that. I think that that was important. I know I was on the council, and I know Stephanie Seguino presented all the information about traffic stops and the bias that was reflected in that data. And I can't refute her data, but I can also say that not doing something about violations is not the way to go either. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? There's someone else.
You're done, Sharon?
She
I
said
am.
thank
I said
you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Sharon.
He was busy.
Sharon?
I just want to say thank you, Sharon. I agree with you. I do though remember when we had Chief Del Pozo and Chief Murad was assistant chief or whatever he was then, they came to our NPA and they told us that they do not give out traffic violations. Like this was 6 years ago, had nothing to do with what's going on now. Sharon, you were there too. I'm sure you remember, but they did not give out violations for speeding, for stop signs. That's just not, remember? Do you guys remember this? It was like, they said it hurt people's self-esteem, something ridiculous. I'm not kidding you. Do you guys remember? I mean, because we actually, my husband and I went and met with Murad afterwards because we were appalled. And then there was somebody hit on East Avenue who was wearing dark clothes, and the driver wasn't blamed. It was the person wearing dark clothes. Well, most people wear dark blue jeans, black pants, anyway. But so unfortunately, that is the way our police was 6 years ago and continues.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Tom, I just want to say one last thing.
Sure.
Karen, I don't disagree with you, except that the reports about bias in stopping had started years and years ago. And the police department backed away from enforcing. I don't think that's the way to say that you've improved the fact that you've addressed bias in policing. I think that's just not gathering the data. I think if you really have addressed the issue, you could still do enforcement and you show that there's an improvement. So anyways, that's it.
Thanks, Sharon. Carter. Carter, we have one other person who wants to speak for a second, so you've got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Really quick, no.
I totally agree. Just stopping enforcement isn't the answer. I think stopping enforcement and designing streets to decrease speeding is really, really important. And there's a bunch of really good city planning resources like narrowing streets, bike lanes, other things like that. It's a lot of ways to reduce speeding is how we design the streets. All right, sorry.
Thanks. And
So I'll take off the commissioner hat and put on the Burlington resident hat for this one. I was going to try to steer clear of redistricting, but a lot of people have opinions on it. And as those of you know, that I was actively involved in that process and tried my hand at drawing a few maps. And while I think there's a lot of reasons why the product that came out of the council is lacking, not the least of which is it fails to address many of the concerns that came out of the public process last fall, districts being one of them. For me, as an individual, the biggest issue is I think that the map has done a good job of addressing the concerns for some residents. But at the end of the day, the dividing line between Ward 3 and Ward 5 is gone Maple Street. And that's the same kind of thing that we had 10 years ago. And that's important because that dividing line goes right down through the King Maple neighborhood, which is Vermont's largest community of color. It's also home to a number of new Americans, many of whom are facing language and access barriers and really didn't participate in the public process. And I just, I found that kind of amazing that we had this kind of a rubric, if you will, with different criteria that folks wanted to see. And when you look at the final map and you square it up against the report, it kind of comes up short. So to reiterate what others have said, if you're not happy with it, certainly, exercise your rights at the polls and vote accordingly. I did want to follow up on some of the public safety comments. My position on that has evolved a bit as I've started to get more information, and it is a divisive issue. But I think for me personally, at the end of the day, regardless of where you fall on the issue, we have a lot of people coming out. People are still engaged and they're not tuning out. So that kind of gives me hope that we can still come together as a community and find a solution that will ultimately bring people together and hopefully lead to some of the end of the polarization that we're seeing. It probably won't be an easy process and it probably won't be a quick process, but the fact that we have so many people engaged in the process, I think is a good thing. That leads me to another point regarding process. I'll make it really quick. Memorial Auditorium, there was a public process there. The RFP that came out really didn't seem to match up with that. Process is important. And that's, what I'm seeing is, for the contentious issues in the city, you strip away the layers, really get down to the brass tacks. It's a lack of public process or lack of respect for the public process that kind of ties everything together. So thank you.
Thanks. We're going to close speak out. We're going to move forward into city council updates. And we have our senior city council member, Zariah. And our new city council.
Okay, I have a lot. I don't know if we want to wait to introduce her just because I feel like she should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to vacate.
Yeah. I have a lot of things on each topic. I'll pause. You can add. I also don't want to put you on the spot since you're still just joining. But I've got a few. I'm just gonna update on a lot, and then feel free to ask questions. How much time do we have?
15 minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick. So Memorial Auditorium, I was actually also going to touch on, which is just to say that there were basically two proposals that were looked at. One of them is for an immersive arts experience and one of them is for housing. I don't actually know how much I'm allowed to say about that. There was a discussion, there was a committee, which Joan, Shannon, and I are the city councilors on. I don't know how I'm allowed to say about how the discussion went, but just to know there's two proposals. One of them's for an immersive arts experience, which would include an auditorium and whatnot, and the other one's for housing. I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't. The bids are public. Yes. So you can go look at the bids. Yes. There was a scoring that I think is not this. There was a scoring that was done by the members of the committee that is supposed to become public. I just don't want to get ahead of anyone. Anyway, so that's just to say the Memorial Auditorium is moving forward. Just quickly on like divisiveness, which I think like I do. It's like everybody, I talked to Jonathan a lot about this. I think we started to talk about this. I like, we are in a very divisive time, and I don't know that that is led by our community. I think that it's like, it's where we are as a country. It's where we are in the way we talk about it. I don't, yeah, I think I just want to say, like, I think there's a lot of trust. I think even within the council and beyond, in terms of like, as much as I disagree with everyone, I feel like everyone's trying to make the right decisions for Burlington. And I think just starting there and then having a conversation is the most productive way forward. And I think that we can disagree on a lot of things and still trust that we're all trying to do the right thing. Redistricting. I didn't vote for the map. I did vote to ultimately put it in front of the voters. The reason I didn't vote for it was actually very well articulated by Chris at a meeting, which was, I don't think it did any of the things that we set out to do when we did the survey. It didn't keep the Maple King neighborhood together. It didn't make Ward 8 look any less gerrymandered. It didn't keep kind of like the continuous, it's not a very, none of the neighborhoods look as continuous as I think they could or should. There were some other things that I'm forgetting now, but the districts, it didn't get rid of the districts. The only thing it did do was keep the old North End and the new North End separate and make people in Ward 8 happy enough, which anyway, so I didn't vote to put it on. I mean, I didn't vote for the map. I did vote to let folks vote on it. Trinity Campus, the last time I talked to the mayor about this, he was like, I don't want to take the, like, I think Trinity Campus is problematic. I think that the universities basically stopped coming to the table in terms of negotiations when it comes to what Trinity Campus is going to look like. The last time I talked to the mayor for this, about this, he was like, I can't take the fall for not allowing them to build more housing, because ultimately they want to build more housing, which I think is a good, which we all think is a good thing, and better housing, better quality housing. But I think that we have to put some conditions on that and have some some asterisks on what that looks like. And they've very much said that they don't want to have that discussion anymore. I told him, just let the progressives take the fall. I was like, we will happily vote no on not having that housing. If it doesn't come with those asterisks, you don't have to take the fall for it. We can. We don't have enough people to do that anymore. So I'm hoping that other people will also, I think Joan Shannon is not happy with the way things are going. I'm hoping my fellow East District councilor will. I think that there's some accountability that has to come with UVM, and that they need to step up, sign an MOU with the city again, like we need to be partners at the table. And I don't think that's how they're approaching it right now. So that's my current take on Trinity. I feel like I'm running out of time. Houselessness, which is just, there's a report which I sent to the steering committee members, which is just that this is like, in terms of like, things are getting harder. If we look at like the folks who were sheltered and unsheltered together, and if you can just scroll down to the bar graph. I'll only touch on this one thing, that one. So we've done a much better job of sheltering people in 2020 and 2021, but there's also been quite the jump in the number of folks who are experiencing houselessness. And I think this is the one thing I think we're doing a better job on as a city, is finally dealing with this problem in a more comprehensive way. As you know, we've got the Elmwood shelter pod that's coming, but that's only going to be 30 something households, which, as you can see, those numbers are, this is for Chittenden County as a whole, but it's not, it's only a small fraction. We're also starting to do a better job of some of the housing that's being built, especially by Champlain Housing Trust, is parts of the fractions of the units are going to be dedicated to specifically folks who are coming out of houselessness. So I think that's a really good advantage that's going to be integrated with other types of housing. So I think we're starting to do the right thing as a city, and saying, because I think federally we haven't done anything to stop houselessness. At the state level, we haven't done enough. And I think the city's starting to step up and say, we have to deal with this because nobody else is going to do it. And the state is starting to help fund. I think we're hopeful that they'll help fund the whole Elmwood shelter. And because it's such a effective and then hopefully effective. And right now it seems like fairly monetarily efficient initiative that they'll fund, that the state will continue to fund that. The last thing that I'll just touch on is policing, because I think it's about to come a lot in January. I think we'll have a lot of hearty discussions, which I'm sure will seem very divisive. Which one, like on crime, I think there's been lots of data on like how much has happened and how much hasn't happened. I think it's undeniable that people feel differently right now than they have in years past, and that feeling of safety has changed. And at the same time, just want to echo what everybody else said, which is like, we're not unique in this. Like COVID has done all kinds of things, from increasing houselessness to increasing how people feel, to the need in our community. And I really like, one of the things that I put is like the cahoots model. I feel like I'm starting to be like, I hope that we can as a community just say, we don't care what it takes. Like, we're going to start funding this. We've been talking about this as a community for more than 2 years. If we have fewer officers than we have, why can't we stand up the alternative right now that we've been talking about for so long, when we've got a community partner that's willing to take that on, which they're not always willing to take on things. So it's like, I think that that's one of my asks, is just that we stand up and say, this is important and we need to do this sooner rather than later. And then my conditions for voting for Murad, if that comes in January, have not changed. I think all of you have probably seen what those were initially, which is admitting that we have racial bias in the Burlington Police Department, having some agreement with the level of oversight. I think that there's something that you said about being watched. And I think that there needs to be a culture shift at the police department. And I've spent more time with the police department on this than I have with activists. I used to meet with every week with 2 of the officers on the school resource task force. And I really yes, I'm sure that it's not a comfortable feeling to always feeling watched. And I think it's the first step in community trust. And you don't do an audit when you're like, oh, we have fraud. You do an audit every year, and you should have oversight of the most expensive department every year, and see when people have complaints. Like the police commission, I think Stephanie is somewhere around here. They worked really hard to get some oversight of just the complaints that were coming in. And it shouldn't be that hard to just get some public process and some public input and what that looks like. So anyway, so that's the other thing is I think that's one of the things that I would need Acting Chief Murad, is the racial bias, and saying that he at least supports the mayor's model of oversight, not a general. That's all.
Thanks, Soraya. And now we have our brand new.
Yes.
Our junior.
We have a junior member. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to work with Soraya and to meet her. And I was sworn in on Monday of this week, and was able to join with the voting, and the votes were unanimous. There was great communication, lots of goodwill in working for the city. I've been assigned to the ordinance committee, the licensing committee, and the racial equity, inclusivity, and belonging committee. And I did meet with Kim Carson, and who was so dynamic. And we talked about issues within the city. Something that's fascinating that came up, and I think I can talk about it. It's not always clear, what is open for public discussion, but the terminology of what the city and the people of the city are trying to do is still so new that there is discussion about actually dropping the word racial in the department, which is racial equity, inclusivity, and belonging, and having it simply be equity, inclusivity and belonging, because that is really what we're after. So there's a lot of fine tuning and tweaking of what the name of this department should be, and the committee, and eventually a commission as well. With regard to your comment, thank you very much. I believe that that the police department moving into the future is something that we can help shape now. And I do not want to vilify police officers. The work is difficult. It is dangerous. There's just now, during the comments, there was an announcement by the city that there was a shooting on School Street, I believe. Staples Plaza, and there was a call out to be careful, to avoid that area. So I just wanted to let everyone know about that.
This was,
Yes.
this was 7/16. This is the UVM alert. Reports of shots fired on campus adjacent to Carrington State Clear of Staples Plaza.
Can't hear.
Stay clear of Staples Plaza because shots were heard at 7:16.
Yep, this was a UVM cat alert at 7:16. Reports of shots fired on off-campus adjacent locations. Stay clear of Staples Plaza on Williston Road until further notice. No further notice yet. I will update if I get another cat alert.
Yeah. So it is, these are real concerns. We need to keep each other safe and informed. And I just, I love these NPA meetings and being in touch with people. Please talk to me about, concerns and ideas about decision-making. There's one last thing I'd like to say, and that is to say a little bit about Bruce Cipher, who passed away, who was a dear friend. Bruce and Julie were amazing. Bruce was with Ctr for many, many years. He loved Burlington. He was such an advocate for the city. When I was working on the Art Hop, when it was very small, we met, and he, as head of Ctr, said to me, whatever you need to make this successful, I will help you in any way I can. And the city is behind you. And it was wonderful. And we set up all kinds of public transportation. The city buses were set up for the Art Hop over the course of 3 days, along with, wonderful introductions, just to make an event that would come to be a sort of an economic powerhouse successful. That was Bruce. So I was hoping we could just do a moment of silence for him. Just, whether you knew him or not, let's just send him off. He's with Bentley. And if we could just take a few moments. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. And
thanks, man.
Yeah. Here you go, Tom.
We're a little bit behind schedule, so we have time for one question. And Earhart, you've had your hand up for a while. You want to make this quick?
I'll make it real quick. Congratulations, Maya, and thanks for recognizing Bruce. I think it's safe to say that without Bruce's visionary efforts and abilities, there wouldn't be a South End Art Hop. There wouldn't be a South End Arts District, and the way the city looks now would have been a lot different without him and his good work. But I just quickly wanted to make sure that I don't know if you misspoke, Zariah, but you said something about how the federal government has done nothing to resolve or alleviate homelessness. And I just want to point out, again, I'm speaking in my personal capacity, but as someone who's been involved with housing and actually works for a federal office now, I could just say that all of the money that has been invested in housing and homelessness over the last 2 years has come originally, most of it, from the federal government, including the pod shelter community on Elmwood Avenue is virtually wholly funded with federal ARPA, American Rescue Plan funds. And those funds, which have gone through the state, have thus far resulted in creation of about 1,000 units of new housing, which is about 4 times the annual production of affordable housing in the state of Vermont, and also brought in $352 million into the state to provide housing in motels for people during COVID, so that they were not freezing out on the streets or living in overcrowded congregate shelters and other places where they could not be safe during COVID. So a lot of what's been accomplished over the last 2 years really does flow from the federal government. And I just want to make sure that that was clear to folks.
Thanks, Earhart.
Sorry, Earhart, that was my ideology talking as someone who's like, oh, if the federal government wanted to solve houselessness, it could. But I know you work for Brenner's office and that we've really gotten a lot of support federally. So I did misspeak. I apologize.
Understood.
I have just a real quick question for you two. Do we need more time for the counselors part of this meeting?
I think that's up to you. It's like, to some extent, I think that having an in-depth discussion about one thing sometimes serves our community better rather than getting 20 updates from me. So I don't know that that's the case.
Okay, all right.
And I can give more written updates. I'm working on it.
I feel that we're a little rushed. So that's why I wanted to ask, so we can plan appropriately. So thank you.
I have an update.
Sure.
New cat update 7:46. So 30 minutes later, the shots were unfounded. At this time, no harm was caused to anyone or the community. Officers have left the scene. Area is all clear for normal traffic.
All right, thanks for that update.
They were not.
We're gonna move ahead real quick. Kathy,
I don't know.
the hot seat's over here.
So, Tuesday night's board meeting, I have to say I missed. For having a cold and coming back from North Carolina, I was too late for it, but I can kind of give you an overview of what we did, or I didn't, but the rest of the board recommended the award of the contract to construction, abate, and demolish the existing BHS BTC facility to EnviroVantage for $11,439,895. And that will start in January. The only thing that since we are suing Monsanto, their lawyers have to be given the time to go into the school before we can actually demolish it completely. But we can't start building until everything has been taken up and to this group, which will do, I think most of it will be incinerated, because they can't just put it in landfill. It's full of PCBs. So, and the other thing is we have started on our next year's budget, which, I mean, the state has put out their letter, which doesn't look too promising, but the hope is that by June, when we finally finish our budget, that it won't be as much of an increase as they're proposing at the moment, thinking it should be between, it was high. So I was kind of taken aback by it when I read it, only because we have just had this increase in property taxes, and I didn't think it should be this way, but often it goes back down again by June. So let's hope that's what happens. So that's pretty much it. We started on working on the budget, and we looked at half year, the superintendent's, if he has met his half year proposals where he thinks he should be, and he is in most of that. I must say that and this is something that I think a lot of people don't know, and I want them to know that this year for the last year, he took a lot of the money from the ESSER funds and actually looked at reading curriculum that's based on brain science. So, and based in phonetics, which is what we haven't been using to teach our children to read. And as a result, we have very low scores. And this year, he used the money, the ESSER funds, and teachers have been trained during the summer. It's been put into all of the grade schools. And there are people coming from the company that wrote the curriculum. They send trainers into the school, and I think they're 1 or 2 days a week, checking up from room to room of teachers in grades K through 3, or K through 3 or 4, making sure that they're really implementing it the way it should be implemented and giving them pointers on getting better at it or not. So I'm very happy with that, because I think if it's anything basic, is to teach our children to correctly read. And if we can't do that, then, that's for me a problem. And so it has been a problem for me for years that our reading scores have been low. And I'm so happy that the superintendent finally, and as he said, and I have to give him this too, he said, if it wasn't for ESSER funds, we wouldn't have ever had the amount of money that it took to change this and change it correctly, so that all teachers who are teaching it are properly trained and someone is overseeing how they're implementing it. So
Thanks.
all right.
Are there any questions? If not, I've got a quick one. The budget is got to be set before the March election, is that right?
Right.
So it's not going to be June.
No. I know, but often we set a budget.
Okay.
And the state sets theirs in June. So it ends up that our taxes end up being lower than what we put through in a budget, because they can't get it done until June.
Okay.
All right. So
thanks for the clarification. All right. Next up is East Avenue traffic calming. Julia. You're going to share some slides?
Yeah, I believe Sam is going to pull them up for
Okay.
me. So hi, everybody. My name is Julia Ursaki. I work with Burlington Public Works. You can't see her right now, but Laura Wheelock is also online. She's our senior transportation engineer. So tonight we're going to give everybody just a quick update on what's happening with the East Ave traffic calming project. The scope of this project, basically what we're trying to accomplish is to design a 25-mile-per-hour street. So this is really a safety project looking at slowing speeds on East Ave. What this project doesn't include is different and new types of bike and pedestrian facilities, or anything beyond trying to achieve the speeds of 25 miles per hour that we're looking for on East Ave. Just a little bit of history on kind of how we got here with this project. There was a traffic calming request in 2017 from the neighborhood. And then a few years later in 2021, we installed the RRFB, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, those yellow flashing lights at the East Ave crosswalk at Billadu Court. And then finally in December of 2021, we kicked off this design and engineering project to do the traffic calming design on East Ave. Then we brought some concepts to the neighborhood in February earlier this year. Based on input from that meeting, we kind of went back and refined our concepts a little bit more. We had a second neighborhood meeting in August, and we are back here tonight to share our concept with you all. So just in general, the project area goes from Kerrigan Drive. Originally, it was up to Colchester Ave, but based on feedback that we got from our first public meeting, it now ends at University Road. So there's two different types of traffic calming features that we're recommending on East Ave. The first is this median chicane feature that is basically these curbed islands that force cars to kind of vertically deflect in the road. So there's a little bit of a jog forcing people to slow down. So we have a few of those, and in the coming slides, you'll see exactly where those are being recommended. And then the next traffic calming feature are these raised crosswalks. So the one at Billadu and the one at University Road, those crosswalks are going to be raised to basically these speed tables that will also slow traffic down. This is a picture from one that we just built on Mansfield. So here we are looking at East Ave. To the left on the screen is Route 2, and up is where UVM is, just to help you get orientated. We've kind of switched a little bit. And the first median chicane island that is in our plan is between Kerrigan and East Village Drive. It is going to require removing 3 parking spaces, and it will retain 14 of the parking spaces along this stretch. And then in the next section, there's another median chicane, and 3 parking spaces will be removed on that block between East Village and Billadu. And then you can see the raised crossing at the crosswalk on Billadu. There, we're not changing the parking at all between Billadu and Case Parkway. And then a little further down the street, we have one more median chicane just north of Case Parkway, where we are removing 3 parking spaces and keeping the 4 that are there. And then finally, at the University Road crosswalk, you can see another raised crossing. We've also realigned that crosswalk a little better. It's kind of skewed right now and matches up with where the old path up to UVM used to be. Now it's more square with the road, so it's the shortest crossing distance and hopefully a bit more of a predictable place to look for pedestrians to come out of the road. So we are still working through our design and all of the engineering drawings that we need to be able to build it. So that's going to be happening through the spring. And then we are hoping to actually build this, and you'll see it on the road either next summer or the following year, just depending on how our schedule goes and what our funding looks like. So that is the overview. This is my contact info if anybody wants to reach out later, and happy to take some questions. I saw yours go up, Zora.
Yeah, sorry. This is more of a comment than a question, which is I love speed tables and traffic calming, and I don't want to speak for the people in Mansfield, but I do have one of my friends lives on the corner of Mansfield and Loomis, and I think the speed tables we've put in haven't been terribly effective because they're very low. They're the same texture as the rest of the street. So I think if we're going to use tables effectively, either it needs to be like brick tables or something that has a different texture or is a little higher. That's all I got.
I've heard that all.
Any other questions? We do have some from online. Cindy?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I really like the concept of the raised pedestrian crossings. I think that could help a lot. It would be great to learn from the Mansfield Avenue experience and see if there's something else that needs to be done to make them really effective. But I'm also so curious if you're planning on anything else at University Road. There was talk of several other possibilities. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just curious of what else you're planning there. For example, straightening out, it looks like you have it now, so it's more perpendicular to the road than it was before.
Yep, so the crosswalk is more at 90 degrees than it is today. And we have the raised crossing there for the crosswalk. And an ADA landing on both sides of the road right now. It's only on one side.
Yep.
Erhard, you're next.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the presentation. This looks great. I can speak as someone who usually speeds down some of our, have to confess, speeds down some of our neighborhood roads. The raised crossings on Mansfield Avenue definitely slow me down. But my question is, when can we get something like this for Grove Street, where I live in the old East End? I remember talking to Dan Bradley, who preceded you by a few years. Dan retired quite a few years ago, about chicanes many years ago. We've had a demonstrated need for this. We had some traffic calming that was implemented by Public Works many, many years ago, and much of it, what was there, has been removed and not restored as a result of Bayberry Commons. I think some of it was supposed to have been restored. I kind of couldn't keep track of everything that was like going on in the neighborhood. We have a very active neighborhood association, the Old East End Association. I think, you know, we're ready to partner with Public Works on the same kind of traffic, hopefully chicanes here on Grove Street. Thank you.
Tom, might I make a quick response to Erhard?
Sure.
Thanks. What we were told years ago, Erhard, was that DPW had a queue system, and that the sooner you got in the queue, the better. I hope they've changed that for one of public need, but back in 2017, they said, get in line. And so we did, and here we are today. So it's great where we're here now. But
thanks for that, Cindy. Like I said,
yeah.
I talked to Dan Bradley about Grove Street. I mean, literally 20 years ago, before there was a queue.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Sharon, I think you're next.
Okay, yes, whoops. Yes, I'm unmuted. Hi, thanks for the presentation. As a resident of East Avenue, I wondered if this was consistent with what was discussed and agreed upon in August, and if DPW planned to come back to the residents on the street before implementing.
So yes, this is consistent with what was presented in August. If there is a desire for us to come back to the neighborhood and talk about it more, we can arrange that. That's not the current plan, but if there are some questions or concerns, we can certainly have another neighborhood meeting.
So the reason I raise this is because parking is becoming tighter and tighter and tighter, and people are having difficulty finding places to park. And I didn't recall 9 spaces being eliminated. I recall something like 6. That's why I was asking. So is that a total of 9 spaces being eliminated? I was just quickly writing it down, you know, and I.
Yes. On the whole, on East Ave?
Yes, and the whole sections. You did section by section. You said three spaces here by East Village, then 3 here and 3 in different blocks. Is that true?
It's 13 spaces total that we are proposing to remove.
13 spaces. So I know that other people that bike and don't drive can't stand this conversation, but the reality is people have cars and there's sections, and I don't know if there's adequate off-street parking for all of those cars. That's why I would like to suggest that you come back so that people are fully aware. It's good to make people aware, even though this is the way it's going to be, so that they can plan accordingly. I care about the people that live on the street that depend on on-street parking, and I value them as neighbors, and I want to give them that heads up. So I really feel like it might be important to come back, or at least if you don't come back to a neighborhood meeting, at least find a way to disseminate that information, not just electronically, but because sometimes it goes to go to UVM, sometimes leaflets. I know that sounds antiquated, but it does get the information out. And I really want people to be informed. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. We have time for one more question. Sophie, you've been waiting.
Just wanted to say that we did get in line, Grove Street, Chase Barrett. We did get in line. We got all the signatures and we handed it in. It was either 2018 or 2019, but I was worried because soon after we handed it in, Public Works announced that they are changing their whole system. So I was hoping we're still in line. I don't know what you can tell us about that.
We do have a new traffic calming program that evaluates traffic calming requests based on data that we collect. So we look at traffic speeds and volumes and crashes. So it's not first come, first serve anymore. It's more based on a safety need of the road. And I'm sorry, I don't know where Grove Street falls in there.
That Grove Street in Chase is the curve on which everyone slips whenever it's snowing. And it's the curve with 2 stop signs where everyone goes without stopping.
Yes.
And everywhere.
I think she's referring to where on the list Grove Street is in the request system, not where it is in the city.
I've got a request. Can you post on Front Porch Forum where Grove Street is in this process?
Sure.
Because that way everyone will have a chance to figure it out and then they can respond to you as they see fit.
Thank you.
And just a quick plug to let people know when we can expect construction. As Sharon said, it's going to be a big deal for a number of residents. And if there's some way that you can get word out in advance so we know what to expect, that would be fabulous.
Yes, absolutely.
The next outreach that I anticipate for this project will be for the parking removal, which will follow our DPW commission approved outreach to all of the adjacent neighbors, which includes a paper delivered or a paper mailed piece of information for notice of the meeting. So that is at least one more piece of outreach coming for this project.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're moving ahead with Burlington Community Justice Center. Bridget.
Now come along too. My name's Lauren, I work with Bridget. Doing a presentation together.
Okay.
Some technical difficulties, so Sam can be our savior.
You want to give us like a verbal overview while they're figuring out how to get the slides up?
An overview of the
Well, whatever.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll go ahead and introduce myself and give some context for the presentation.
Yeah.
So my name is Lauren Monaco Eddings. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a restorative justice practitioner and a victim services specialist for the city of Burlington. And I work at the Burlington Community Justice Center. And Bridget is also a victim services specialist. She's based at the Burlington Police Department. And she also works at the Community Justice Center. And so our presentation is on community-based approaches to public safety. Bridget and I, over the last 3 to 4 months, have been working with folks in a lot of different contexts, all within or adjacent to criminal justice, public safety, and public health, to field some research for the presentation, as well as the need for the presentation. We work really directly with community members impacted by crime, harm, and violence in Burlington. And so we hope that our presentation today can reflect just, the diverse expression of what folks are feeling right now in Burlington in regards to public safety, and as well as offer up some solutions or just, some information about resources that we have. And we've also got some slides on root causes of crime and harm. I do want to let people know this is a pretty, I would say as far as presentations go, it feels like a pretty dense one. It is technically 45 minutes, but we've kind of taken it and squished it into 20. And so if you're feeling kind of like, wow, this is a lot, that is normal. And we get that. And we're available for questions, hopefully at the end, and also by email. And our doors are open if folks want to talk at any point in the future. So is the Zoom
Yeah.
set up? Great.
So, yeah, so we'll, so Zoom, Sam will be doing our, most of say next slide.
Great. So
Thanks, Sam.
we have. All right, I'll make a signal. Awesome. Great. Well, welcome. And yeah, thanks for having us here. And I think we can go to the next slide now.
Which is my slide. So my name is Bridget, as Lauren has said. So these are just some objectives that we're going to be looking at today to review current crime or issues facing Burlington, knowing what to expect after a crime happens, understanding the root causes of crime, as well as identifying community-based approaches to public safety and harm, becoming familiar with community resources, and as Lauren said, a Q&A at the end. Go next.
Because we are community-based and community-focused, we're gonna introduce the presentation with some quotes from community members on what public safety means to them. And so I'll look to you. It is not criminal to be poor, to be mentally unwell, or to have an addiction, and yet we treat it like it is. Mutual respect between police and people. Yes to more community-based social workers. Not jumping to the conclusion that an unusual situation is a dangerous one. Community doesn't jump to fear-based reactions. Decriminalization of substance use addiction. Neighbors knowing each other, saying hello to each other, not being afraid of being friendly to each other. Police departments that are supportive of progressive police.
So what that shows, so as Lauren kind of spoke about, we can see that folks are interested in community approaches to community violence, which typically involves a relatively small number of people, but has a lasting impact on the entire community. And we also know that violence is learned, which means that the circumstances that increase a person's risk of becoming a victim or offender can be undone. We will discuss prevention later in the presentation, but first we wanted to take a look at the current issues facing Burlington. So if you, this next image shows, this is like the most up-to-date police data that we have as of mid-November. What you can see here is that these are reported incidents of crime. And we also recognize that this depiction does not capture unreported incidents of crime, but it is a good representation of the general climate of crime and other issues that we are facing. So of note, there has been a considerable increase in incidents of gunfire, larcenies, mental health issues, overdoses, and stolen vehicles.
And it's important to note that things like an overdose, that's not a crime, right? And yet we do treat it as such when we involve a police response.
And so in the next slide, so yeah, that's just highlighting again those major increases that we've seen thus far. And this is just another depiction of the previous slide that shows percentages of those same categories. And I realize I see people kind of leaning in. I know it's small, but basically that box is kind of like those numbers that I had mentioned earlier. And something I've noticed, so stolen vehicles is on the bottom there with like a 456% increase. I think it says 435% increase. What this shows us is that even though incidents of stolen vehicles is high, recovery rate is actually pretty high as well. But the condition of the vehicle upon return is not the same as you might expect.
It's better.
So when the car is returned, it's eventually found abandoned. It has needles, bodily fluids, stolen items, and personal items from the person who stole the vehicle, indicating that the car is being used as shelter or a consumption room for substance use, then left abandoned when gas runs out. So the data of stolen cars is really indicating a need for housing and support for substance use. In a few moments, we will discuss the root causes of crime and how to use data and program implementation to address the needs of folks in an effort to deter them from using crime as a solution. And so this, I know that this probably looks very difficult to see, but basically this is supposed to show like it's a simplified flow of what to expect after a crime happens. I also want to recognize that some of you in this room may be very familiar with crime in Burlington and know all too well what happens after a crime occurs. We at the Burlington Community Justice Center realize that the incidents of crime and harm in our city have had a tremendous impact on individuals, families, neighborhoods, and the community at large. And these impacts have been significant. Losses have been emotional, tangible, physical, monetary, and traumatic. We are sorry that some of you have been victims of assault, larceny, burglary, and stolen vehicles, to name a few. And we hope that you have felt supported by the community in the aftermath. If you have not felt supported, that's also partly why we are here. As Lauren mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of discussions with folks over the last several months, and we sense that the community is feeling disconnected, mistrustful of neighbors and systems in place to help them. And we want you to know that there are resources available, which is what we'll get into at the end. But this is also just a good flow for those maybe who are not familiar or are confused about what happens during the process. So at the top there, a crime occurs. The person then has the option of making no report, which Lauren will kind of discuss, and then we're making a report. That report can go directly to an officer or online reporting. An investigation ensues, and if there is a suspect that can be identified, an arrest is made. The officer then is able to send that referral directly to the Burlington Community Justice Center, where the person who is a victim of that crime is supported by us, Parallel Justice, as well as a victim liaison. The person who is responsible for the crime is supported by a coordinator, and they go through a restorative justice process. The officer also has an option to send directly to the state's attorney's office for review. The state's attorney's office then has the decision to either prosecute, decline, or send to diversion. So as it's kind of color coded, so green is all state's attorneys and the blue is Burlington Community Justice Center. So as you see there, diversion, it goes back to the victim liaison to do that restorative process. If it is declined, Parallel Justice is still here to help. And it kind of, so even though there's not a formal victim services like advocate, which is what you would get if the crime is prosecuted, we just want to let you know that we would be a resource in that case.
Yeah, and there is also a line that connects a no report over to Parallel Justice. And that's also to express that there are a lot of folks who actually never end up reporting the crimes that they've experienced. And that's for a variety of reasons, some of which include people not feeling comfortable going to the police, people having gone through the criminal justice system and haven't found justice that way. And so our door is open the entire time after a harm has occurred. It's also open before a harm has occurred because we work with preventative services as well. And so this is just to say for folks that either just have a lot of questions about the criminal justice system process or who know for sure that that's not the route that they want to go, we are available at the Burlington Community Justice Center to hold space around that, answer questions, safety plan, and come up and create with a creative, that person's own plan for what justice could be for them.
And in the next slide, you'll see that not all investigations lead to an identifiable suspect, and that can be frustrating and discouraging, but a real possibility. And in those cases, the beginning of the process is similar. So a crime occurs, you can either choose to make no report or report with an officer online. The officer conducts a review of the online report or opens an investigation, but if the investigation turns up no leads or solvability factors, the case may lead to no arrest. Solvability factors include things like date and time, witnesses, and supporting evidence, which are not clear in all cases, such as a larceny from a motor vehicle or vandalism. So maybe you've parked your car, you don't use it for a few days, and you come back and realize that a vandalism has occurred. It's short, it's small, it lessens the window of leading to an identifiable suspect. So even when an investigation leads to no suspects, we just want to let you know the victim services are still available for Parallel Justice. We offer information, that's what they're on the bottom, information, resources, emotional support, safety planning, and limited financial assistance.
And some context for why we have a slide all about what happens and what to expect without a suspect is when we support folks who've experienced crime and harm, one of the statements that we've been fielding is, well, the police aren't coming, the police aren't doing anything, and that's because we don't have any cops. And it's important to understand that when there's not a suspect, there is no investigation. And so if it's an online report that you had to make because you were told to do so by an officer, or an officer never came to do that report in person, if there's no suspect, regardless of whether or not the police show up, there is no investigation. And it's important to think on that and to think, regardless of whether there's an officer, there's still a need for support. There's still a need for victim services. And so at the Community Justice Center, that's where I think we can come and fill in a need that exists. When people experience harm, oftentimes they are experiencing trauma as well, and material losses, just to name a few things. And so we are there to support you folks through that process. So to prevent crime, we need to understand and respond to its roots. And people who experience multiple arrests, which make up for a quarter of all arrests each year, are people who experience significant health needs that are overwhelmingly unmet before, during, and after criminal justice system contact. Fortunately, in Chittenden County, we have a growing emphasis on services for people with mental health and substance use disabilities who come into contact with the criminal justice system. It's a step in the right direction of treating substance use, mental illness, and poverty as public health issues. And I'm really excited to live in a community that has increasingly shown its support for community members who experience these significant barriers in health equity. So there's a graph here that is, it used data from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, and the Prison Policy Initiative conducted this study using that data. And they found that for the at least 4.9 million people that were arrested and jailed in 2017, at least 1 in 4 of those folks were booked into jail more than once during the same year. And the graph there will show you that half of those folks had serious psychological distress, with 25% experiencing a serious or moderate mental illness, and 27% of those booked more than twice had no health insurance. The report also concluded that people with multiple arrests are disproportionately Black, low income, and unemployed, and that the vast majority of the arrests for that year were for nonviolent offenses. Low-level offenses like drug abuse violations, disorderly conduct, those offenses make up for over 80% of all arrests each year, with serious violent offenses occurring for less than 5% of arrests. So another way to put all of that is to say that people who experience multiple arrests each year don't pose a serious public safety risk and are actually people that are being punished for not getting a lot of their most basic needs met. For me, in my position, I can't help but consider how at present we're relying on a system of punishment to address an issue of health and life chances. Research, information, relationship building, and understanding, however, can direct public and community investments in care. This would include employment assistance, education and vocational training, financial assistance, mental health and substance use treatment, and checking in on your neighbors. These investments can help heal conditions that lead our community members to police contact in the first place. I was surprised to find that there's a lack of research on the relationship between adverse childhood experiences, and that's known as an ACE assessment, and adult criminal justice system contact. Considering that exposure to trauma, particularly in childhood, has been associated with a greater risk of substance use disability and mental illness, and that a significant amount of adults who go to jail each year experience these adversities, then the lack of research on this relationship is a critical limitation, and it's a key area for crime and harm prevention. So ACEs are determined by an assessment that was created by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The assessment uses a scoring system that attributes 1 point for each category of adverse childhood experiences. The questions cover a domain of trauma, and these all refer to experiences that occurred prior to the age of 18. Higher scores, like 4 or above, with the highest score being 10, indicate increased exposure to trauma, especially when that score is informed by adverse community environments like racism, poverty, poor housing quality and affordability, lack of opportunity, and overall community disruption. So you'll see here in the picture that ACEs and adverse community environments are shown, one of which is the roots, and that's the community environments like poor housing quality and affordability, violence, poverty, racism, inform the tree, and those are experiences like mental illness, incarceration, homelessness, domestic violence, substance abuse. And this is to say that it's really in our best interest to consider a person's experiences and environment leading up to an arrest, and not simply the choices that they made prior to the arrest, in order to understand how a person got to police contact. And so the research that I was able to find on this was actually from August 2022, which is extremely recent. And that research study actually confirmed that there was a significant lack of research on adverse childhood experiences and criminal justice system contact in adulthood. And the research study was from the Academic Pediatric Association. And it confirmed that there was a lack of research on that relationship, and also that it is overwhelmingly true that people who score a 4 or above, again, with the highest score being 10 on those assessments, are overwhelmingly likely to experience police contact later in adulthood. So considering that the criminal justice system, right, is disproportionately composed of adults who've experienced childhood adversity, punishing these individuals is not an effective approach to improve lives that have already been so characterized by harm. As you know, we are victim services specialists, so we work with people who've experienced crime and harm on a day-to-day basis. In addition to being community focused, we are also victim informed and victim centered. And so it's really important that we have this slide here. And the slide reads that victims prefer increased investments in treatment options than prisons and jails. This may come as a surprise to some. Another thing that I found really interesting about this study is that, again, this was a new study. It was the first of its kind. This is a national survey on victims' views. And the study examined victims' experiences from diverse backgrounds and also from violent and nonviolent crimes, all types of crimes, to gather this perspective. And it's really important to our presentation because in terms of moving forward with criminal justice reform, if we're not listening to victims, then we're going to cause a lot of harm in that process. Well, we talked a little bit about the Burlington Community Justice Center and where we come into all of this as a community-based approach to public safety. So we spoke about the Parallel Justice Program with Bridget and I. We both run that together. I'm based at the Community Justice Center. I support folks primarily who want to look outside of the criminal justice system for justice and healing. And Bridget is at the Burlington Police Department, where she does that. And she also supports folks that are already involved in the criminal justice system and need information, emotional support, resources, and safety planning. In addition to that, another program that we have, which is an alternative to the criminal justice system, is our conflict assistance program. So Zoe, she's our conflict assistance program coordinator. She actually built this program from the ground up. We celebrated the 1-year anniversary of that program a year ago. So Zoe looks to the community to identify conflicts that folks have, and she does one-on-one conflict coaching. She also works as a mediator, and she does workshops across the city on conflict and building up skills around conflict. These are all services that are sliding scale, and nobody is turned away for lack of funds. Great. So when police are contacted to manage a mental health crisis and an armed officer arrives at the scene, people with mental illness are 16 times more likely to be killed by cops than those without mental health challenges. 31 years ago, the city of Eugene, Oregon developed an innovative community-based public safety system to provide mental health first response for crises involving mental illness, homelessness, and addiction. And so that's CAHOOTS, or Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets. They're a mobile crisis intervention program, and they offer free confidential services in Eugene and the Springfield metro area in Oregon. And it's a free response that's available for a broad range of non-criminal crises. And so that would include homelessness, intoxication, disorientation, substance use, mental illness, and then also disputes resolution. And so folks actually call 911, and then through dispatch identifies who to send. And oftentimes, if they're not sure, they just send both. So they will send, if it's a situation where it sounds like there is violence, they'll send a mobile unit team. And so that's a licensed clinical social worker, and that's also a paramedic, as well as an armed officer. So that's a holistic approach to public safety that's been going on in Eugene, Oregon for the last 31 years.
And then here we have the Crisis Advocacy Intervention Program. So CAPE for short, that's housed in the Burlington Police Department. So myself, as well as the community support liaisons, which is the new position, social workers with the police department, along with the domestic violence victim advocate and the domestic violence prevention officer, basically just do a coordinated effort to help and provide services to people. So maybe like a victim comes to me and is presenting with multiple issues and maybe needs like more long-term case management. I can pass them off to the CSL and they can support them in those more like chronic needs, such as like if it's homelessness, substance use, and things like that. And then in the next click, you'll see that there are also a lot of community-based approaches to public safety that we have here. And sometimes it can be like hard when we during this meeting, we found out that there was, potentially a shooting that happened at the Staples Plaza, so we're inundated with a lot of information all the time, but it can be easy to forget that we have these great places, great organizations in place already. Howard Center has a street outreach team that builds rapport with our folks that are either living on the streets or you see them on the streets very often. So they build a relationship with them as part of like a preventative effort. Turning Point Center is a peer recovery group. Peer workforce development, they just got a grant at the Pathways to help people find their way into the workforce. New York City has a great Office of Neighborhood Safety that is basically similar to like what we have as CompStat for substance use. They have a group of people with multiple stakeholders that meet and talk about neighborhood safety. So yes, that's just like an overview. I know that we are running low on time likely, but to end,
the secret to a healthy community lies in our relationships to one another. This is something that Bridget and I talked about before we had the idea to do these presentations, during the, while we were developing these presentations, and now, because we really believe in that. As Bridget noted, there are a lot of folks in the community who care a lot. There are a lot of community-based organizations who have been here for some time, who have a really good pulse on the situation, who care about you all. And oftentimes we're just a phone call away, and that includes us. And I think it's really easy to turn away from one another in times where it hurts. And I think we've gotten really good at doing that from the pandemic, especially closing our doors and going in to keep ourselves safe. And we don't need to do that as much anymore. And so, wherever you are in this question of what public safety means to you, and if you have questions or if you just want to talk, you can give us a call. Even if you're not sure, we'll be able to help. Oftentimes, we've learned that just that phone call that we have with folks can mean so much. And so, yeah, we'll leave you on that. And we're excited to answer some questions. And thank you so much.
We have questions in the room here.
I do also want to say thank you so much to all the folks who were on that screen before, and that includes Karen Vestine, who is also on the call right now. Thank you, Karen. Just wanted to give you a shout out because you're here.
Angie?
Yes, I don't have any questions. Well, I have a million questions, but I won't ask them now. I'll just say how much I appreciate your presentation, that you showed up here, and that CEDO in our city has this program. I haven't needed to avail myself of it, fortunately, but for all of those people who do need it, I'm very, very grateful that you do that work. Thank you.
Other questions in the room? Yes.
I just want to make a comment. I too want to also thank you so much for your work. And I want you to say that I have right here in Ward 1 witnessed your work. And it was a situation, keeping confidentiality, where a police officer recommended you all rather than arresting a person. It was that kind of channeling to you. It was highly, highly successful. And the person graduated from your program and returned to just full participation and stability, which was really brilliant to see. So thank you so very much. And I want to know how often that happens. So it is clear that a police officer always has that choice possibility, because this was a situation where the person could have been arrested and they weren't. So how often do you see it happening that police are making the choice to turn to you?
That's a good, yeah, so I don't know a number, but it's very common. Like, I think,
We have a lot of
Becky,
cases.
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm trying to think of like caseload, like I know Barb, she does victim services and her caseload maybe right now is 40. I would say like weekly referrals is
And
maybe-
it was Barb.
Barb, okay, yeah,
We
so
love
Barb is
Barb.
our victim liaison for adult cases. So yeah, if hopefully, you never find yourself in this situation, but if you do, that's what we're here to let you know, that Barb will hold you and care for you and walk you through everything. And the officers do, yeah, like it's used very well as far as like doing referrals. The reason sometimes it would go to like the state's attorney's office is like, let's say it's somebody who has maybe like a lengthy criminal history, or somebody who like maybe in the same week has committed multiple, crimes. And so in that case, maybe they would send it to the state's attorney's office, and the state's attorney's office can review to see if it's a prosecutable case, or they can send to diversion or kickback to the officer, and then the officer can then send to us. So even though that flow chart is like very simplified, but as far as numbers, I don't have a number.
And we didn't touch on youth either in this presentation, because we find often that they deserve an entire presentation just for themselves. But I am a victim liaison for all of our youth cases. And so that means, so that could be a youthful offender, so a 22-year-old, and also a 14 or 15-year-old. So I work with the victims on those cases, and oftentimes those victims are youth as well. But sometimes they're adults with a property crime, for example. So that's where you would get to meet me. God forbid that happens to you, but I try and live up to the work that Barb does as well. And largely I support youth.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So again, I'm Nick Smith with SD Ireland here. I'm joined by Laura Wilson, who is our broker team and property management. She can maybe answer some of the questions that I might punt away from a little bit here, but anything that has to do with the development, we can get into that really quickly, and then I'm sure maybe some of the other questions we can get through as well. But I'll just go through this really quickly. Again, I was here I think it was 2 months ago now for a meeting, and we did our brief presentation. And since then, we've had a little bit of additional plan work done. We've gone through some of the planning process with the city as far as sketch plan goes. And, try to address some of the comments that we had here with the community a little bit as well. Maybe we should go to the second sheet of this, just so this is the existing development, which is the 12 modular homes on the loop on Grove Street and the 1 apartment building. This is our proposed design here, which we've done some minor tweaking here.
Can you just orient us to where we are actually?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry. This is Grove Street. This is just up from Bayberry as you're leaving, heading towards South Burlington there. So this is right on the Burlington, South Burlington line, and there's the Velco right of way that runs there. I think this is just before you're going the 89 overpass there. So does that help orient you with as far as Bayberry goes? And on Grove Street. Yes, sorry.
Is Bayberry or this?
No, this is different. This is a separate project from Bayberry, but that's just easiest orientation wise. So this is just up the street from there. This is an existing loop Yes, yes. And we're looking, again, sorry, I know I'm kind of breezing through this, hoping that we can draw from the last meeting, but this was essentially we've got 12 modular units that are kind of falling in disrepair. They need some upgrades, and a lot of them are really at the end of life. So our analysis was really the best means forward was replacement of these, not only to kind of increase the unit numbers, but also to help service the community by, providing more housing, number one. Number two, really the type of and style and the quality of housing as well. So these units are duplex units, kind of in the same vein of the Bayberry duplex units. I know we have some architecturals that we can jump to if we want to, but really I think the biggest change on this plan from the last time we were here is kind of the garage layouts and things like that. We just wanted to and then the detail that we're showing. So really it's very similar feel. We're still lining the street, kind of creating this street facing neighborhood here on the inner loop. And then we're also facing Grove Street with the units that are along Grove Street. Some of the improvements, we're looking to do some amenity area in the center loop there, and along with, stormwater treatment that there currently isn't any on the site. So we'll be doing some increase to that. So that'll be a benefit as well. I'm happy to take questions or direction on this. I know we had a lot of comments last time that we didn't really get to. So
Yes, a couple of the things that we talked about, and just jump in, folks. I think as an NPA, we're sort of we talk with Megan Tuttle a little bit. We're just trying to get clarification about what our role is when we listen to developers come to us, and you're not the first, obviously. We're just wondering if you know how this particular project fits into the overall Burlington housing plan, if there is such a thing. So that was one of the questions that we had. Another was just the LED scope of the project itself. There was an effort to ensure that it was those higher standards in terms of environmental impact. Then I think we also asked about the transition for folks who are living there now. Those are the three things I can remember. Maybe others that you all remember as well.
yeah, maybe this is where I let Laura kind of jump in a little.
For the housing, the Burlington housing, plan overall, how does this redevelopment kind of suit the plan? Well, I would say on 2 points, it increases housing stock. So it's going to increase rental housing. It's going from 15 to 26 units. And then it's going to double the IZ or inclusionary zoned units that are currently there. So right now we have 2 and it will increase to 4. In terms of, the residents that are there now, we have currently 9 of the units are occupied. 6 are vacant. So as they have naturally turned over and moved out, we have not moved people in. These units are at the end of their useful life. And we had a decision to make. So we have held a resident meeting this fall with the existing residents to talk about future development, to show them the proposal. We have surveyed all the residents as well to find out what, how we can help relocate so we can start the development. We are working with each and every resident of the ones that have responded or come to the meeting. We have about 4 households so far that have asked for support in relocating, which we will be doing with our current portfolio. We have the luxury of having about 600 rental units in portfolio, so we have a lot of availability to rehouse people. And in terms of the affordability for those folks, I am using the IZ model to offer the IZ rents that the city of Burlington sets right now as we integrate them into our other communities. We have actually about 3 households that are buying homes, so they'll be leaving into the home ownership. We also have some affordable townhomes coming for sale to market in South Burlington. We have a household interested in pursuing an affordable home ownership option within our portfolio. So overall, I think we've had great communication with the current residents, and
I feel like we have a good plan for everyone that wants some support from us.
So
May
are
I-
you, when
may
you
I-
say you're housing them somewhere else, with the option of moving back into the renewed house they're in, because you're also breaking up a neighborhood of people that are all neighbors, so.
Offered the current residents priority should they choose to move back to once the property is complete. And actually, as of now, no one has selected that option, but there's 2 households that we have not heard from.
And what would the rent be? Would it be at a lot higher rent or no?
We haven't set the rates. We haven't even done cost estimates, but they will be market rate housing with the exception of for inclusionary.
So can I ask a question? This is Sharon Busher. You heard me at the DAB meeting. So I campaigned here in 2020 and it was a neighborhood and there were families, and a lot of the housing that you created is 1 or 2 bedrooms. So I'm not sure how you accommodate families. Hopefully you've got a larger portfolio than I'm aware of. I was very concerned when you came about the displacement of people. And those units I was around when this was a riding stable and a farm. And so the brick house that is there that was built in the 1800s is significant. And the fact that your plan talks about demolishing that is concerning to me. And I think that I just wanted to put that out there. The other thing is that the homes that were built, the modular homes, were less expensive than other homes at the time. So it allowed more affordable housing. And I think it's germane to really understand what they currently pay for rent and what they'd have to pay as they move forward. I was happy to hear that you were addressing affordability. But I am really concerned about the fact that without knowing the numbers, I don't know whether or not ultimately the number of people that currently live there will have affordable housing. And one of the things that I think this community is missing as we go forward with building housing is that, yes, we need housing, but the underlying factor is affordable units. We have a lot of market rate units. We need affordable housing units. And I really am concerned about that also. So I'm worried about displacement. You're starting to address that. Thank you so much. I'm worried about the significance of the brick house and the historic nature of that property and that house as being kind of the pinnacle of that memory. I've been around in Burlington a long time, and I certainly support adding housing, but I am concerned about the cost of the market rate units that will replace these current modular homes. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Just really quick before we jump into one more comment, I will address just the historical nature of the building. There was a clerical error in the DAB. This is a design advisory board with the city. So that building is not listed on the state register or the national register. So it's not currently listed as a historical structure. I understand that this building is from the 1860s, I believe, and it does have some, the Greek style architecture that could be considered historically significant, but we have a full report prepared by an architect that specializes in historical significance evaluation, and we'll be going through the full state process. I mean, the general conclusion right now is that this building actually isn't even eligible for historic register anymore. So it was 20 years ago, before there were some alterations that were done prior to us taking over this project, but since then, there's been some deterioration, replacement of a lot of the existing exterior and things like that. So, I think as we progress through this process, it'll become much clearer that building, really, the historical nature of it. I understand, like, a lot of people are kind of envisioning the building as they drove by 20 years ago, but that same building, you know, doesn't truly exist. You're seeing that singular face along the street. I mean, the remainder of that building really has had very significant work to it. So, and again, Sharon, you know, we'll provide that full report so that you can see it, and it's going to be confirmed with the state historic architect, Devin Coleman. So just to address that comment.
Thank you.
Yep.
I understand about the 1850 building being beyond not being worth hanging on to, but you mentioned some are there other buildings that are considered to be not ready to be demolished? I mean, some of these buildings are quite recent, relatively speaking.
Yeah, and I mean, as Sharon kind of alluded to too, these buildings were modular units at the time, and this was kind of a little bit earlier in the development of modular units, where the construction methods and material really weren't up to snuff compared to now. And so while these units came in and they were really cheap to construct, they really didn't have the longevity that they were hoped for. So that's why a lot of these are actually deteriorated, and the ones that aren't currently housed, part of that is some of them just, you know, we've elected not to bring people back in and rent to, but also some of them just aren't actually fit for it. So
these are like 20 years old, 20.
Correct. Yeah. 20 to 22 is like, would be the latest that they, the first one that was installed was, I think, 2000.
So they really didn't last hardly at all. I mean, a couple of decades is a pretty short life for a house.
Yeah, we agree.
I'm sort of astonished that was, well, I'll just leave it at that. Oh, sure.
Sorry, I didn't want to wrap you with the cord. Yeah, I guess my question was, I'm also concerned about the displacement of residents. When you first came, that was a big concern, but you talked a little bit about that. I guess the other piece is, yeah, I just have to agree with Sharon's comments. Like, we have a ton of market rate housing, and if just building more market rate housing was, and this isn't necessarily to you all, I think this is a city issue when we're thinking about developments. Your role is to build housing and make a profit off of it. But yeah, I'm just really concerned about, you know, just the fact that we're like IZ, yes, we have a minimum and that's the minimum. And so I guess I would hope that, and I heard you say you don't have cost estimates together on like what rent would look like, what project costs would be. There's a difference between like costing something out and then actuals, and things change when you're building something. But I would really be interested, or I think it would be at least helpful for me to have you all come back with that information and say, here's what rent is now, here's what rent is, you know, list unit by unit. You know, here's the number of units or number of bedrooms in these units currently, 1 through, I think 17, you said 1 through 26. Like, this is the percentage profit we're making, because I think it's, I don't know, reasonable for our community to know that, and with the understanding that you're a for-profit business that needs to be able to afford to build this project.
Yeah, I mean, can I just briefly address one aspect of this, you know, trying to address the housing need here. So, you know, ST Ireland, a lot of times we try to partner with like CHT or Summit or something like that, but to bring affordable units in our project. So, you know, we're actually, you know, we've got a building that's going in Sunderland Farms in Colchester that CHT has purchased, and they're doing the construction on that lot now. So, you know, what we try to do is we try to help partner with them when it's feasible. Now, CHT and a lot of other of these nonprofit organizations that help with, you know, the affordability housing really aren't looking for these, you know, projects that are, you know, more single family oriented, because they have a very unique cost structure built into their model. They really do focus on kind of like a 30 unit plus building. So that's why, you know, we understand where you're coming from and wanting to see more of that. And you know, I know Laura can talk to it more.
My full background is affordable housing, over 20 years in the city of Burlington. And for a private developer to build affordable housing, we would have to go after the same buckets of funds that CHT, Cathedral Square, and the likes go after to do their work. And when I worked for a nonprofit and for private developers started getting into the arena, it's really carving out or taking away from the good work that they do. And this is going to be a market rate. I don't believe we're going to share what that information is going to be. And in fact, I may not know it until a couple of months before we open. The market is changing and we constantly reevaluate it. And we do try to partner as often as we can. Typically, it's in support for land that they can build on. And just to echo what Nick said, we do try to co-locate to help that happen.
I wasn't going to speak on this, but I have to respond to that.
Okay.
I guess the question in response to your just recent comment is, if the goal is to increase the supply of housing and produce affordable housing, does it really matter if it's a private developer or if it's a private nonprofit? And it sounds like, you know, when you're saying competing after the goal of funds, it sounds like there's some protectionism going there where the government or whomever is essentially picking winners and losers. And it seems to me if someone wants to build housing, shouldn't matter who it is. If they're going to be building and make a commitment to affordable housing, let's get it done.
Knowledge to manage the programs like those organizations do, because the money does come with a lot of regulations that we don't even manage. You know, we don't have the depth in our.
That's their bread and butter is that, yeah.
What I really see lacking is building housing and selling it so people can be homeowners, or building condominiums or duplex, you know, selling a duplex and letting people buy each unit. Because it does seem like for years, and we have really increased, the housing around here has really increased, you know, as far as rental housing with Bayberry and, you know, all over the place. But very few developers build a house and then sell it. Why is that? Just profit or?
There's a number of factors. I mean, I think you can speak to a few of them, but I know there's a trend towards rental units as well. I mean, I know maybe that it is partly market driven as well, but I know a lot of, especially young adults aren't looking to purchase a home. Well, I trust me, I agree. I've been there too. So, but a lot of people too are looking for you know, less maintenance, less, you know, some of the quirks that come with home ownership too that they're trying to get out. I'm not saying that's the majority of people, but there are some obviously, and I agree with you that trust me, I bought a house a few years ago and as a first time home buyer, and yeah, it's definitely a challenge now to get in the market.
Just to answer the home ownership, SDR Island is building currently, it's just not in Burlington, in South Burlington, duplexes, and there's 30 units and 15 will be affordable, sold as affordable with homeowners opportunity. And one of the renters currently at Apple Grove is interested in one of those properties. So.
I just see it.
I'm sorry, what?
Are your hands up?
Yes, my hand is up. You sparked my interest. I'm jealous. Why is South Burlington getting a project? No, serious, like this, about the same size, and will have half of their units affordable and the ability to purchase? And why is Burlington? I think Burlington is really light on home ownership, and we've got an awful lot of rental property. And I think we want to things need to be in balance and sync. And I feel that we're out of whack and we're out of balance. And we've been asking, even when Ireland built Bayberry, we asked about, could some of them be owner occupied? Could it be a mix? And that never was realized. And now you haven't built this. I know you've got a plan, but I really am concerned that South Burlington, which has more owner occupied property than Burlington, is getting that mix that I think Burlington really needs to have also. And how do we entice you, the developer, to create that for us?
I think that there's two portions maybe from my experience on that question. Number one is that South Burlington project is the South Village project in South Burlington, which really is 300 plus units. So it's a sliver. I mean, there are rental units in there too. We're doing there is a combination there, but the other answer really comes down to kind of market driven factors. I mean, the South Burlington market, there's a request, and I know not just from the neighborhood community, but also from, you know, people interested in housing that are looking for sold housing versus rental housing. So and I don't know if Laura has anything to add, but that's kind of it.
I mean, I can bring that back to our development team for future pipeline, Sharon. And I'll leave it at that.
I would very much appreciate it, because this was, I feel like a broken record, but many people that are in the room in person, like Karen Long and others, we were all here with Bayberry, and we all asked those questions about owner occupied to have a mix. And so this is not a new request, and maybe there are new faces now at Ireland that will hear the request and maybe reevaluate the real need to have that mix in Burlington also. So thank you.
Erhard, did you have a question?
Not so much a question, but just in response to some of the discussion, and I'm not going to speak to why you guys are developing more homeownership opportunities in South Burlington than in Burlington, but in terms of condominiums and homeownership generally, you know, things, Karen, you asked about condos. Financing for condominiums changed significantly after 2008, and the changes that happened in banking. Changes happened for home ownership as well, because of the the Great Recession. In large part, was driven by the mortgage market that failed, and it failed because there were a lot of loose practices. And that really changed the market for condominiums. It also changed the market for home ownership, so that requirements for home ownership were more stringent, and it made it less profitable for developers generally to develop condominiums and also home ownership opportunities. I'll also point out that Champlain Housing Trust is, in partnership with Farrell at Cambrian Rise, is developing quite a few affordable shared equity home ownership units as part of Cambrian Rise, and Champlain Housing Trust continues to offer and increase home ownership opportunities through their shared equity programs. So just thought I'd throw that out. Things really changed after the mortgage meltdown of 2008. And I think we're still feeling a lot of the repercussions of that. The other thing that's obviously happening with inflation, and construction costs have gone absolutely sky high, both from a labor standpoint because of workforce shortages, as well as materials. And it's just becoming increasingly difficult to provide home ownership opportunities that are within the reach of, what we would normally consider as, moderate income to, middle class families. And I'll note that the Housing Finance Agency just unveiled a program called the Missing Middle Homeownership Program. It was just unveiled yesterday with the Bank of Middlebury down in Middlebury. It's partially federally funded through a share of the state's American Rescue Plan Fund. So I think there is stuff happening in the homeownership sphere, and there are challenges. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right, any other questions? Carter?
All right, last comment on my soapbox. Yeah, I mean, I may be naive a little bit in the sense that I do think it's important for our community to have hard numbers around how much developers are profiting. You know, when we think about like, you know, fundamentally, I think it's probably a bad idea for the community to have housing as a commodity in the market, and it is. And so at the very least, I think it's a reasonable ask, given the impact both on public safety, on just our community as a whole, when folks making money off of housing, particularly if it's housing that's going to be long-term rental, which is great investment. My guess would be it's the rental market in Burlington is quite more profitable than the rental market in South Burlington, but in the long run, which may be part of the reason. But, you know, if companies like SD Ireland, which are, you know, on the scale of companies better, perhaps, or at least local, yeah, like our community does deserve to know and have a say in how much profit is being made, given the long-term ramifications of projects like these on our housing market. Like, I just think that's a reasonable request, and we don't have to go back and forth on it, but I would hope that we would get that information not 2 months or 3 months before units are available for folks.
Thank you. All right, I think we are done. So that concludes the NPA meeting of December 14th.